Morning, guys. My name is Bill. This is Pirate Solutions Forestry. We do a quick video this morning on laying out and cutting rafters. As you can see on the equipment shed for the sawmill, all out of our own rough sawn lumber here, and that's really what I have lying around the yard. I am putting the rafters on. So I've shot 3 videos so far on this, and all of them have come out bad. For some reason, my phone just shut off in the middle of one. I'm going to try to do this for just rafters and to keep it simple. What you want when you do this, especially out of rough sawn lumber, is you want your, now I realize this isn't all sitting flush right now, but you want your rafters to come out like that, where the bird's mouth is nice and flush, the angle's nice and flush in the top. I do run myself just a plumb stick up there, screw it in temporarily to set my outsides against, and then a story stick across when I set the rest of them that are all marked out at the same layout as the rafters, so I have something to just tack them into as I'm putting them up to keep them dimensionally the same and somewhat fastened until I start putting sheathing on. But we're gonna simplify this, and we're gonna make it shorter, so that if you look up how do I cut a rafter, then this video will come up. But this is the rafter that we're working on right here. I got myself a nice little setup to work on with it blocked up, so I can cut multiple rafters out without cutting into what's underneath it. Makes it nice and stable to work on. First thing that you want to do, oh, say hi to Danny. There's Danny, looking for squirrels. First thing you want to do is crown your rafter. Any framing material that is going to come under load, floor joists, rafters, anything like that that's going to come under load should be crowned. And what that means is that every board, joist, whatever you want to call it, is going to have some curve to it this way. This one happens to curve like this, just a teeny little bit. It's, if you pick them up and look down them, you'll be able to see it. And if it's so minute that you can barely see it, then make your best guess. What you don't want is you don't want them to go in bent down. When you crown them like this, the load will straighten the board out, and they're stronger that way. So what I do is I mark them, any member with a little mark like that. That means that it's crowned. This is the crowned up side. Also, little quick tip, pro tip, if you're doing framing members in a house like 2x4s and stuff like that, especially with Home Depot lumber, you want to crown them all the same way, or you're going to get wavy walls. So it's not a bad idea. Most people don't crown 2x4s. But what we're going to do now is we're going to lay this rafter out. We're going to cut it. I already had a master. I don't like the way the master's transferring. It's got a bump in it and it kind of wobbles. So I'm going to make a nice clean one here. And I've tried to do this 3 times, but the videos have come out crappy. So first thing I'm going to show you is, if you go to bricklayer.com, or if you type into Google rafter calculator, you can punch all your numbers in and print yourself out a handy dandy little template like this to cut your rafters out. The important things are what your plumb angle is, and on an 8 pitch, which is, it goes up 12 inches for every 8 inches of run. I'm sorry, for every 12 inches of run, it goes up 8 inches. Is 33.6901. Now that sounds really complicated, but it's not. I'll show you the easy way to do it, and there are multiple ways to do it, but I'll show you the easy way to lay that angle out. And we are going to cut our rafter out from this long point to this short point first, and then we'll lay the bird's mouth out and we'll cut that out. And we can lay it out on the way down too, but not sure which way I'll do it yet. I'll show you how to do it both ways, but in case you make a mistake, and since I'm making a master, I want to make this dimensionally perfect. We are going to cut that 33.6901 and this 33.6901 at the dimension of our top plate length right here, top rafter length, which is 5'4" and 29/32. Now, guys, pay attention to these numbers because the closer that you get this rafter, the better your roof is going to come out if you use this for a master. Make sure you don't use this number right here because that number right there is to this plumb cut for this bird's mouth. That is 4'9" and 11/16. But no further ado, we're going to show you how to do this. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to lay out the angle on the top. We're going to cut it and then use the long point to measure down to the short point of the next angle. The easy way to do this is with a speed square. I'm going to get you over the top of this and zoom you down, or just focus you down like that so you can see what I'm doing. It's always not a bad idea. So your speed square pivots like this. It even has a little thing on the speed square that says pivot. It's not a bad idea to make yourself a little tick mark here on the rafter. If you're not used to holding speed squares steady, shoot, somewhere. Oh, there we go. I'll use this pen. If you're not used to holding speed squares steady, this way you can go back to it if you don't know where you started from. On this side over here, you have angles. And if you rotate this over to, let's see, this 34 is right here. And you line that 34 up with the top of your rafter here, and this angle now is 34 degrees. Now we know it needs to be slightly less than that, so we can kind of rock back a little bit because it's just less than 34. However, we have something simpler, and that is this number 8 right here. This number 8 right here is the angle of a common rafter cut. So all we have to do on the speed square is use that number 8 and line that little number 8 line up with the top of the rafter, and this angle now is that 33.69, blah, 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 the 0, 1. And we're going to make a line. Now, if you're working with really wide rafters, you're going to want to use a bigger square like the 12-inch one down there, and it has exactly the same setup as this one. So you can use that one also. If you don't like rocking around your speed square and you're not used to this, you're going to want to get a bevel gauge or something now and set it to that angle. Now, a simple bevel gauge, not a lot of people are going to have. I have one almost in every box, or whatever you can find that you can set yourself up. And this one's going to come apart here first. That you could go ahead and mimic this angle. Make sure you see what I'm seeing. Yeah. You go ahead and mimic this angle and tighten it down so you could reuse it over and over and over again. Or you could cut a chunk off like that you could just stick on top of board at that angle and use that. Just set it on here and mark the line. But it's not a bad idea if you're not used to using speed squares to go ahead and set yourself up a bevel gauge of some type to use over and over and over again. And I think this one actually, if you look at what I just did, you see that number 8 right there? You see where that line is in the corner? That means that I just set this at an 8 pitch. In this particular one, you can bring the stop over right to it, tighten this down. So if you knock it around, you set it back down on the stop, it should come back to that number 8. And the only problem on this one with doing it that way is that the stop's in the way to check it. That's funny. You'd have to look at that, it's in the way. You'd have to do it this way and set it out the other way. So that stop kind of sucks. It's kind of dumb. You'd have to do it off the outside. You can't set this on. You can't set it on because everything's in the way. So anyway, I just rocked the square around. We're going to cut this one off. I'm going to back you up. I'm going to cut this one off, and then we'll measure down off our template, and we'll cut the other angle. Now, if you'll notice on my circular saw, I do have an edge guide sticking out of it right here that I can take off. I'm going to leave that on there for the whole day, just in case I have to dimension out a board side to side. I do full well realize that everybody in the world is not the best at using a circular saw. And if you're not, you should cut your master on a chop saw. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come off my handy dandy paperwork here, and my rafter length on the rafter top length is 5'4" and 29/32. So we're going to measure that down and make a mark and recreate this process. 5'4" and 29/32 off the long point. And 29/32 is 7/8 long. So right between 7/8 and 15/16. Seems like a pretty tight number, but they need to be on rafters. And I'm going to put my thing on that pivot point. I'm going to rock myself over to an 8-pitch. The closer you get this master rafter. Now, if you're working with wet lumber and you can't mark with a pen and you're using a pencil that somehow I just dropped and I can't find it, sometimes a pencil will draw. Sometimes you can also just use your knife. What we're going to do now is we're going to cut that out, and then we're going to lay out the bird's mouth. You know what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to lay the bird's mouth out. Let's do it, and just so we can cut down on our cutting here. So our bird's mouth is 4'9" and 11/16 to the plumb line for the back side of our bird's mouth. Okay, we're going to lay that out real quick. Get you back here. So 4'9" and 11/16. We can just do this and draw it all out before we cut anything, just in case you run into something that you don't want to. 4'9" and 11/16. 4'9" and 11/16. That's 4'9" and 11/16 right there. Make sure you don't make any stupid mistakes when you lay out the first one. We're going to go ahead and draw ourselves a plumb line down our same thing, 33.5. I'm 33.6, or just use our little 8. And we're going to draw ourselves a little line down here. Here's where there are a million different ways to lay this bird's mouth out. I'm going to show you the easiest. So the bird's mouth is dimensioned. It's 2 and 11/32 high by 3.5 inches wide. And I can show you, yeah. So you get your 3.5 there. It's also dimensioned on here to 2 and 11/32 high by 3.5 wide. So what I'm going to do is I am going to show you the simplest way to do it is to do this with a framing square. I'm going to keep this out so I can get so in case I forget the numbers. On a framing square, you're going to go We're going to rock this down until it hits 3.5. And we have to come up that, what's 2 and 11/32. So 2. So each 16th is 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. Two and 11. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. 11/32 by 3.5. The interesting part of this, so these are 16ths. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, right there. I'll make up myself a little mark there to know where I'm going to. And it's by 3.5. The interesting thing here is that I don't think the plumb lines up on this dimension. 3.5. I don't like that at all. I do not like that at all. I'm going to double check this. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up. There's something's weird about this angle's got to be off. Oh, it's way off. Okay. All right. All right. So that makes sense. I'm going to I have my tick mark up here. I must have used the Hip and Valley 8. This is why we got to do math, guys, right here. Because that did not line up, and I could tell. Okay, we're going to make a new line. And if you want to come up your 11/32, so on this, these are 8, so it'd be 4, 8, 12. It'd be just a tick, oh, sorry, 2 and 4, 8, 12. Just a tick less than that. And in theory, it should be 3.5 inches. So if I line up my 3.5 with that, it should come out right there. And that should be the bird's mouth. Now let's do it. So 2 and 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 is right there. It should be there. Oh, wrong line. Should be right there. Yeah. So now you can see my mark here. That works out just about perfectly. I just got to come over just a little bit. It's 2 and 11/32 and 3.5. And again, the closer you get this first setup, it's not like this every time. You just want to get this one right. Now you can see that was my mark. There's my line. That was my 3.5 roughly, which comes out perfect. We're going to cut this out. That's our bird's mouth. That's our second cut. I'll show you how to cut these two out. Grab my paperwork off the ground. In theory, this would be the only time that you would have to do this. All right, so you're only going to do this once, and you're going to use this rafter to trace out all the rest of them. So let me get you back here while I cut these. And the only time that you'd need to redo it is if you mess something up, or if you go to put one in and they don't work, which I'm not going to say doesn't happen. I will say that for me, I don't think I've ever cut a rafter that didn't work. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about for a second here. You want to get yourself in a comfortable position to cut. What was happening there was my fence on my saw was hitting on the bottom instead of hitting on the board, and it was just giving me a problem. I'm just cutting right up that line. And we're going to stop at the top. You don't want to overcut these. Okay, so you can see I cut right up the line and I stopped right at this line. Do not overcut these. Hack framers overcut those. All right, I'm going to show you the right way to do it, especially when you're doing rafters. Now, this one I'm actually going to cut left-handed. If you can't cut ambidextrously, then practice. Again, it's very important to stop right at that line. Like that. I'll show you how to take that out after we cut the rafter off. And now we're going to cut this rafter off. It needs to be supported in 2 spots to do this right. And your offcut board should be supported. So if this cuts here, you need to be supported in 2 spots on that side and 2 spots on that side. I want to cut on my waist side on this side, and I want to make this a nice clean cut so I can use this piece as a rafter too. If you notice when I cut that, nothing bound or dove or fell or anything like that. It's a nice clean cut. So now I have a rafter, and we're going to cut out our bird's mouth. And I'll show you there's a million different ways to do this. If you're doing 100 of these, then you're going to want to get yourself a Sawzall out. Make sure your view's good here. If you're doing 100 of these, you're going to want to get yourself a Sawzall out, and you flip the Sawzall upside down, cut this chunk out, and away you go. If you're me, in my truck, I carry 3 saws. One of them is a Japanese pole saw, which is this one right here. I'm going to use this to finish this cut. It works pretty quick. You can hold it nice and vertical. Just cut right to the line. Don't overcut it. And I just pull it straight up and down. It's pretty simple. And it gives you a super clean cut. Now you can use, just to show you, you could use this Irwin cuts pretty fast. You could use that and push. This is a Gayakucho Ryoba Noko. They're some of my favorite saws. I have about 10 of them, and one stays in the truck. Perfect for doing these. And I'll show you what we have. So now we have a bird's mouth, and we have a little hanger on right here and a little hanger on right there. Now in soft pine, those don't make a huge difference because they'll sink into the wood. However, as general practice, you should take them out. So I'm just going to grab a chisel out of my pack. Hopefully your chisel is sharp. Just going to cut down. You want to make this first one really, really good. So nice clean lines there. Use the angle here that you cut as a reference surface. Just cut down all the way. Make sure I have a nice clean corner, especially for the master, which is what this one is now becoming. Seems like that took a long time, but it didn't. Now I have a perfect clean perfect clean bird's mouth. I am going to leave this chisel out because I will use it over and over again. That's cutting a rafter 101. I would, if I were you, if you're going to put a soffit in, you need a 90-degree cut to this right here, somewhere down here. I would not do that now, and I'll tell you why. And also, the length of this rafter, I'm going to tell you that the length of this rafter, even though I did this one perfect, is general. Because your structure is never going to be perfect. And what you're going to want to do when you get done here, after these are all in, you're going to run a string line down these to see how straight they are. If you really care if it's a house or something, you have to get this fascia board perfectly straight. And also where your soffits are going in, you want that soffit to be nice and flat. You're going to need a string line and snap a string line and cut those after the fact. You're probably going to have to trim your rafter tails after the fact off a string line, drop a plumb line down on the ones that need to be cut, and true those up into a nice straight line. And your soffit cuts, you're going to want to run a string line and cut those little plumb cuts sideways after the fact off a ladder so you can get them nice and straight, so you can get that nice and flat so it'll come out good. Let's lay out one more here. Now that I have my master, I'm going to write master on it. And we're going to lay out another one. We'll cut another one really fast. Hopefully I have enough material here. We've got our crown marks. We always want to crown up. Here's my master. You're going to want to take your time in lining this thing up as good as you can. Either that or you might as well measure every one. You want to get it close, as close as you can get it. And if you do this, if you get it really, really close as you can get it, mark it out right, then when you go to put them in, they're all going to go in and they're all going to look good. So I'm going to go ahead and mark my line here, my line here, my line here. I already have my top cut here, is already done. We'll go ahead and cut this one out. Get myself a couple of points of contact here. I got this one. I need one here. That supports this. That's already supported. Go ahead and make my cuts. Also, when you do these, you want to be sharp, guys, with your pencils and stuff. You don't want these lines to be huge. It's just going to make it easier on you later. Since I lost my pencil, it's kind of actually a blessing. Let's just see for shits and giggles if we have enough rafter to cut one more. And we don't. So when we getting two out of these. I'll go ahead and rip this bird's mouth out. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. Yeah. So it's just as easy with a pull saw. You can buy these at Home Depot too, and the DeWalt makes them. They do have crosscut teeth and rip teeth on them. One side is rip teeth, one side is crosscut teeth. What I found is that on these cuts, this is definitely crosscut teeth. Sometimes this cut, especially if it's long, will be rip teeth, but crosscut teeth are working the best for me on that cut. I've already cut a few rafters here, so. So now I have two more. Just go ahead and chisel up my waist. If you can keep that saw all the way over against the side of the cut, or cut with a saw with a thicker blade, thicker plate, then you won't have this little mark. But it's just that fast to take it out. Make sure it's a nice clean corner. And let's take a look. Let's compare the two, see how they came out. I'll take our master, we'll lay it on top. I'll line it up as good as I can here on the ends and on the top, and then we'll take a look at how good a job I did. So that's pretty perfect there. Get this up to the top. Don't let it rock around. Keeps rocking side to side. Just trying to get the top lined up. All right. So let's take a look at it. We'll see how close it came out. These would be perfect. So hopefully you can see the end here is perfectly lined up. See how the angle just disappears. Bird's mouth is beautiful on both of them. End cut, same thing. I mean, if I had to be critical of myself, but just keep in mind, you're going to end up trimming these anyway. This is probably a 32nd of an inch out. So that's it. That's Rafter 101. I will stick an 8-foot collar tie on that, and I line my collar tie up with right along this, so it sits flush to this seat, and put a screw in it. And I make it 8 feet long, so I line it up with this too. So that sets this at 8 foot. I'll put one screw in the top of that to hold that together. We'll do that on both sides. That gives you the ability when you go to put it in, if it doesn't if it doesn't drop in, like on the ends, and you don't have any flexibility of pulling the wall to get it to drop in, you can just pull that screw out quick and get it to drop, then push it in tight, put the screw back in, and you're all set. The only thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that your collar ties, if you're going to use them as a loft, all have to be the same. So I am going to rip out some collar ties at 8 feet long, cut them all, so that I can haul this thing up there like I did with that one in one piece. So I put the whole thing together, take it inside, put it up on top, climb up there, drop it on, get my plumb board up there first so I have something to lean it against, screw it into the plumb board so it'll sit there, and then I can make a layout stick, stick a layout stick across there with ticks on it where all the rafters are going to line up, and then I can do the rest of them. So next time you see me, hopefully we'll have them all in. But I'm going to get on with it because I got a bunch to cut and I can't get 3 out of those. So I am going to have to rip another board down to 6 inches, and I have to rip out the collar ties anyway. So for Danny, who's laying in the sun over there. Hi, Danny. And myself, I appreciate the watch always. If you have any questions, hit me up. It is hard sometimes talking off the top of your head like this. Cutting these out is just that simple. What else could you use? You can, if you were doing bird's mouth over and over again, you could get yourself a set of stair gauges. Like if you're doing stairs, like these right here, you actually could snap these on that at that 2 and what was it, 11:30, 2 and 11:30 seconds, and the 3.5. You could snap these on right there so that you can just push it up against that. You don't have to go through measuring and to mark out your bird's mouth. It's just as simple to do it with measuring. It doesn't have to. If you take your time measuring and take your time cutting, these are going to come out way better than what you can imagine. So, if you go to a typical framing site, if it's close, it's good enough. They're never going to all be perfect. I kind of shoot for perfect just because I'm a woodworker. So typically when I put them in, you get bird's mouths that come out that tight on both sides. I don't know how good it's going to show up there, but because it's leaning over, it's out this way a little bit, so there's a shadow line, but they're nice and tight and perfect, and that's just going to make your roof come out flatter, make it easier on you. And using a collar tie like that and putting them up by myself, even if you don't want collar ties in, you can take that out later if you're not doing it with a ridge beam, which this does not need. It's just too small to go through and do a ridge beam and have to climb up there and attach them that way. You could, but it doesn't. It just doesn't need it. So I'm going to get on with it, and hopefully I'll see you guys a little bit later with a whole bunch of rafters up. I'll put a day in it out here, and we'll be ready, hopefully, to start sheathing the thing tomorrow. I would like to get the sheathing on the roof to protect this floor, so I'm kind of in a rush to do this. I have a ton of milling to do. I did sharpen up some Stella cut bands, and I will be going at that milling hopefully later in the week. I'll probably mill all weekend just because I have so much to cut for customers right now, and I'm taking away from it, but I want to get this roof on so that I can keep the rain off the inside. So appreciate the watch. Hit me up, like, share, subscribe, ask a question if you want. But for now, for Danny and myself, it's Pirate Solutions out.